Use a pot that is wider rather than tall. People who come from cities like Delhi need to be very cautious. Why do we need to add coco peat? This thought might make you overwater the plant. Hi guys, it's no surprise that today we will be talking about ferns. As you can see, I've laid out all my ferns here, and today I will be sharing with you a few tips about what you need to keep in mind while growing ferns. The first tip that I would like to share is keep your ferns away from dry and windy spots. Now you will have to agree with me that ferns look lovely in hanging baskets, and we tend to hang them up in places that are dry and that have drafts. Ferns hate dry climate and they thrive in humidity. So you need to keep this tip in mind, especially if you come from a city that is inland and that's dry and windy. You need to be very careful about how you grow your ferns and the spot that you keep your ferns. People who come from cities like Delhi need to be very cautious, but people who come from cities like Mumbai, which is closer to the coast, it's much more humid here, and it's a better climate for ferns to grow and thrive. The second tip is that you need to add coco peat and compost to your soil. Why do we need to add coco peat? Is because coco peat is excellent at retaining the right amount of moisture for the fern. Some may think that ferns need a lot of water to thrive, but this thought might make you overwater the plant, and you need to be very careful here because ferns don't need soggy wet roots. They need a well draining soil. Now you also must use compost because plants like ferns thrive in soil that is very rich in compost and organic matter. If you look at ferns in the wild, they thrive and they grow beautifully where there is good organic matter. Tip number 3, use a layer of mulch in your fern pots. What is mulching? Mulching is putting a layer of something on the top layer of your soil just to trap in the moisture. Mulching helps the soil remain moist and it doesn't allow the water that is in the soil to evaporate quickly. So thus keeping the humidity and the moisture level of your soil intact. You can put things like pebbles, you can put things like sticks, or even a little bit of moss or dried leaves can help. So this is very good for ferns, especially in dry climates. Tip number 4, grow your ferns in bright but indirect sunlight. Ferns do love sunlight, but if it's direct, it tends to burn your fronds and it can cause damage to your ferns. Direct sunlight will dry up your soil quicker and in turn harm your plant, and ferns don't like a dry climate anyway, they need humidity. So it's going against all principles of taking care of your fern. If you observe, ferns in the wild, they grow in forests and in coves and in places where there is a lot of shade and there is dappled sunlight. They do need sunlight, but direct sunlight is not something that they enjoy. Tip number 5, use a pot that is wider rather than tall. Ferns don't need pots that are too tall because they have a very shallow root system, and the wider the surface area, that is how much they spread out and that is how much they grow and flourish. Now this here is a Nephrolophis exaltata, the Dallas variant, and as you can see that I have planted it in a pretty tall container. Now the roots don't go very deep, that is why this is a waste. But I have done it because I was going after a particular look, and you can do it if you want. But if you want your fern to spread out, you need a wider container. Now as you can see here, my Boston fern has got the scope to thrive and spread out because of the container that it is in. If you look here, it's in a rectangular container that's shallow but wider. So it's got a lot of scope to grow, send out a lot of fiddle heads and new fronds and fill up the entire space. Tip number 6, keep your ferns warm. Now ferns don't like it so much. They start getting a little stressed when temperatures drop below 18 degrees Celsius. They prefer temperatures between 20 to 30 degrees Celsius. Ferns love an ideal tropical climate, but if it gets too cold in your area that you live, the simple thing to do is just get your ferns indoors and keep it in a warm room where you can control the temperatures of the room. Tip number 7, water your ferns consistently. You have to first understand your fern and see how much water it needs, and then maintain that schedule. The best thing to do is poke your finger deep into the soil, at least 2 inches down, and just feel if the soil is dry or if it is damp. If the soil is dry 2 inches deep, then you need to water your ferns. Once you understand that, you don't need to keep poking your finger every time. You can understand your fern and then water it according to its needs. If you ask me personally, I do not use the poke your finger 2 inches deep to check the moisture of your soil rule, because I have understood my ferns and I know that I need to water them daily. And you need to understand your ferns personally. Don't follow any rule blindly. You need to understand your plant and see what it needs and then accordingly act. So you need to evaluate the factors around you, like the climate, the weather, the season, the place, everything that will affect your fern, and you need to draw out a proper schedule to water your ferns. This is tip number 8. This is our last tip. Do not over fertilize your ferns. Now, ferns are very sensitive to being fertilized. There is a tendency that you can over fertilize your ferns very easily. It will show in the tips of your fern getting burnt or browning. If the tips of your fern start browning, that means you are over fertilizing your plant. So pull back on the fertilizer. What I do is, I fertilize my ferns once in 3 months, and I use mild fertilizers like vermicompost or cow dung. Ferns like a more balanced fertilizer, and the safer bet is to go with something organic. So that's it. These are the 8 tips that I feel that every gardener needs to keep in mind while looking after and caring for their ferns. I hope these tips really help you. We plan to do a series on ferns, and this is just the first video that we've come out with. We plan to give you detailed information about each fern that we have dealt with closely, and I hope you benefit from this. And I would love it if you leave your suggestions and questions or comments down below, and it will really help us to get better content to you. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, please do subscribe and also hit the bell icon